Welcome to the Utah Epodcopalians. Now, this is the podcast of the unique Diocese of Utah, talking about our unique church in our unique state. And how can we say the word unique even more? Trying to come up with something, but we can't because we're going to get right to our program today because it's really interesting. Now, I have Karen Gleeson as the guest here, and we've known Karen, or her camp name Shine. We have known her for all the stuff she's done in youth ministry, all the stuff she's done up in camp. But she has a new task, and her new task is to now incorporate those that are maybe a little older for camp, but I guess she's going to tell us no one's too old for camp, but the people that are the community of all those who are Episcopalians here. And it's broadening all this stuff that she's done to bring us together. Well, I'm not going to try to describe what she does. I'm going to ask her, Karen, what's new? What are you doing now?
Good morning. Well, I'm excited to include another part of my career and going forward. Like you mentioned, I've been with the Diocese for 18 years now, and I have a calling in my heart to start reaching out to be more inclusive and including generations as our baby boomers and our traditionalist generation, and connecting our generations with our youth as well. So I'm hoping to bring in some more support to all of our groups, bringing together an intergenerational ministry. So that is my hopes, to be able to share a little bit more connection and support for each other.
So it's a way to say that the people that are my age, which I'm older than 20, older than 30, older than 40, older, well, we can keep on going, that we're kind of missing that we've been over here with the youth, we've been here in some place, and then we've been over here with the geriatric or baby boomers or whatever we want to call,
Right.
and I can say that because I'm one of them.
Okay.
What have we been missing by not all being together in this multi-generational ministry you're doing?
Well, I'm hoping that I'm seeing that, like you mentioned, we have like silos of different generations that we're concentrating with our services and our worships and church and our activities. So I'm hoping to bridge that gap and help that, and bringing in some other volunteers and people that are also as passionate as I am to help bring their communities together and learn from each other and share each other's stories and our what bake together or play music together and just try to build the gap. But I think it's really important because the generations, such as your generation and the
My
traditional
generation. You
generation,
can go ahead and say the baby boomers,
the baby boomers.
grandpas, great grandpas, or whatever you want to say.
Yes. Well, there's so many stories that you can tell us. And whenever I am with people of that generation, I just walk away and I feel so blessed to have had the conversation with them and opening up questions and really starting to have a communication together of learning and sharing of wisdom, but also just sharing stories, because there's so many stories of going through the Depression and World War II and what they've learned, and the joys of the life of living a different lifestyle than we lead now, and just sharing that those stories we can learn so much from, and our younger generation can learn so much from, and I don't want that to be lost, and I want to be able to support each other and help build that, and bring in a team with me, and we could all work together and build this community of support and sharing and joy and meaning. Let's see if we can do it.
All right. Now, what have you planned? What's going to be the first thing out of the gate that brings everyone together?
Okay, here we go. I'm thinking this is going to be a wonderful opportunity to bring us together, is having an intergenerational afternoon tea.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. So let's bring in the tea service and the little sandwiches and biscuits and scones and share stories together and have a time of sharing where we can ask questions. with each other and share stories with each other and bring in a multi-generational. So the youth are invited to bring in, let's say, a neighbor or a grandparent or a parent or an aunt, and our older generation of your time frame can also bring in a friend or a younger person, a grandchild, or even just, like I said, a neighbor, a friend, or even just a friend, or come on their own and enjoy time of fellowship and community, and have a time of joyful connection. That's our first event, and that's May 11th. So an afternoon tea down at the Wasatch Retreat Center downtown. And if the weather's nice, we'll have some time outside. We'll come inside and we'll have tea together, a sharing time, and then we're going to make greeting cards of sharing gratefulness for each other, and make them together and send them off to somebody we appreciate. So that's my first kickoff. Let's bring us together.
Now, this is not all brand new material for you. I know that in your past as being in the youth and in camp directing and things that you've done, that you started to do some programs where there were the multi-generation, and my understanding is that they were tremendously successful when there was an opportunity in the setting of Camp Tuttle, by the way, one of the most beautiful spots in all of Utah. When you brought people of different age groups together, what happened? What was the dynamic?
Well, it was nice to have the support with the whole family coming. The dynamic changed because we were noticing that, let's say we just concentrated on the youth, the parents would come and drop the youth off, and they would have their younger sibling, and they would hang out and wait for a couple hours or do something, some errands, which they probably needed to take care of. But, it was separate. And then they'd come back and pick the child up, and then they'd go off and do their thing. But when we started including the families with the younger ones, the siblings, the parents, the older people, we all were able to talk about it afterwards, or we all had that in common, that a common event of being able to talk about it and memories together. And I think it was a success because the fact that it didn't exclude anybody. Let's bring the whole family together. If you have a 4-year-old brother, bring him on. Let's have some fun together as a family.
So we're looking at a way to take, I think of church, and I think of here's a bunch of people over here that might be a little more elderly than some people over here, or a family with 5 kids, and they tend to sit next to the family with 2 kids or 1 kid or something like that. Is it your goal that our community that comes together for Eucharist, Holy Communion, is to be together as a community, or is that asking too much?
Oh, wow. Well, I think that would be wonderful because the youth would learn from the whole program. I think that will get into a whole nother avenue of our worship together, which is a whole nother category, I believe. I'm hoping to first start out with building a community together of support. That is what we see already. I'm hoping, because I see kids coming to church at Eucharist and older generations, which I appreciate that because I see that already, but I would like to see that more with, well, that we're getting into a whole nother worship conversation, I think, that I've been trying to work out for 18 years of bringing church together with the youth, and such as we do that camp and nature. And that's why we're also including family camps up at camp. Well, that's another segue into another way that we wanted to bring the multi-generations together, is opening up family camps on Sundays throughout the summer at camp. So that's a whole nother thing we're talking about as well.
We've done a lot with the youth, and you've been absolutely a magnificent camp director and a magnificent youth director when you broadened the activities that you were responsible for. We really have tried as a church to reach out to the youth. Do you think that in your observations that maybe generally we could have probably done a little more for some of the people that are, in the pews too, so that we've emphasized the youth so much? Is this kind of an attempt also to recognize a wider group in the church that hasn't had that concentration before?
Oh, I think this is a great opportunity. That's what I'm hopeful to have, is a support for all the generations, such as what you're saying. If you a large community of our supporters is that generation that's supporting all of our youth and activities. Why not bring them together? I know when we do the youth events, we're always saying a grateful thought prayer for our communities that we don't even know about yet that are supporting them. Like they have no idea, some of these kids, where the support is coming from, where we can go and we can do these wonderful events. Well, where's that support coming from? It's the people in the pews that are putting that money into the plate, that are helping our support our programs. And so let's now look back at who has been supporting us all these years. Let's do something where we can support them and do something together.
Great. Let's go back to your tea. Now, I know you're kind of in the formation time of that, although it is coming up fairly quickly. You've now started to reach out to others. What's been the response when you've just sort of mentioned it to some volunteers or some potential people that you might want to include in this? And particularly when you've reached out to those that are not part of the youth group, when you've reached out to the baby boomers or whatever, what's been the response to those when you say, "Hi, I put together tea. What do you think?" And what is the response?
Excitement.
Really?
Yes, excitement. They love the idea. So far, who I've talked to, it's been a joy that they're excited to be a part of. And that's what I'm looking for. I want people to help as well. It's not going to be me doing it on my own. Obviously, we have to work together and bring this community together. And I've asked, and they have so many ideas. Like, that was the whole point. I wanted to get ideas, what they would be interested in. So I have a lot of ideas of going forward of what we want to do together. And this was one example. And I love the traditions. Like, one of the persons I've talked to, they're like so excited to bring the tradition of sharing tea together. That's not something the younger generation, we've never done a tea party. I mean, we used to do that when we were little kids. You had your stuffed animals
Yeah.
around with your little tea parties, but let's do it intergenerational.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
That's your
That's
first.
one thing.
That I know your first thing, and I know I'm thinking, of course, I'm an employee of the diocese, and I know our bishop Bill is just so dedicated to inclusiveness. When you've talked to her about that, when you've talked to the bishop, what has she said about inclusiveness to you that's inspired you?
Oh, very supportive. She was very supportive about this idea of going forward and including all generations in this. And it brings the family together, and it brings everybody together with support and love and faith. And that's the other part. We want to touch on the faith as well, and sharing stories of faith and what our older generation shares. But our bishop is very inclusive and supportive of all generations, of all backgrounds, of wherever you're coming from. And she inspires me with that. And I think that's her energy that was brought into this diocese, was part of that. We all want to be part of that inclusive nature, and forget the judgments out the door, and let's learn from each other, especially with intergenerational. We can't stereotype the kids. I mean, our kids today, they're the most, they're out there and making things happen. They're pushing justice, and they're standing up, and they're working for our nonprofits and volunteering more than any age group has ever done. And we can learn a lot from these kids, just like we can learn a lot from our generations of our baby boomers. And so she's totally supportive of that.
That's interesting because you've talked today about what the youth could learn from those that have been around. You'd mentioned Depression, World War II. We can even go into other wars. We can go into those that went through the Vietnam era, those that go through various things. But now you're talking that what can the baby boomers learn from the youth? Now that's interesting because obviously there's so much more than how to use your iPhone that you can learn from
They are good
from
at
those
that.
that are younger and how to use that computer. Uh, but what things that, as you've reflected on this, do you see that those that are older will profit from this multi-generational ministry that you're doing?
I think youth provided an excitement and a joy that brings that into our community of our older generations as well. It's nice to have a mix up, throw it out, make a little bit difference. And I think it also provides a sense of meaning for our baby boomer generations that are providing something for our youth to learn something from. So I think it can be a great communication partnership. Let's call it a partnership with cross generations. So I believe that it's helpful for our generations to be able to pass that down. Like we had some other ideas of names of calling it wisdom keepers. Well,
Oh,
let's
that's
have these
interesting.
wisdom keepers share their stories, and I've mentioned that before, of just that connection between the two can be a great relationship. I mean, they can learn a lot from each other.
I've never thought of myself as a wisdom keeper. Do I?
Absolutely. Oh, are you serious, Craig? You always have a wonderful story to share. It's wonderful. I love the stories.
Wow, I'm now a wisdom keeper. This is going to make my whole day. Thank you. Wow,
Absolutely.
let's just end the podcast right there. I'm a wisdom keeper. That's enough for me. No,
Yeah.
I mean seriously. Okay, we've talked tea. We've talked about, I know in talking to you before, even some things that some walks, some nature walks, some
Hmm. Yep.
some things that we could do at camp.
Yep.
Again, Camp Tuttle, this wonderful resource that is not just for those that are under the age 18. There's a lot that we can do. And but what are some of the other things? Do you look for outreach projects
Mhm.
together? Do you look for what sort of things now that we'll have that's tea and that becomes a foundational part of the ministry? What other things, not to say, okay, on this date you're doing this and this date you're doing
Right.
that, but what are
Okay.
some areas that you would like to explore after the tea?
Well, we have this wonderful place called Camp Tuttle that is open. We have a lot of programs that aren't just for youth. You know, we're going to hit all ages, and why not utilize this for this great opportunity to bring folks up to camp that aren't uh, the youth campers. So we were thinking of days that the kids are uh, not at camp, or even just a time where we can utilize a space at camp. Bring in our wisdom keepers and
Wow.
share. Yeah, why not share some stories, have lunch together, pack a lunch, make it simple. It can be as just a drive up this beautiful drive up the mountains,
Mhm.
share lunch together, share stories together, and then who would like to go for a walk? Let's go enjoy these beautiful hikes around camp. Whoever would like to do some walks around camp. So that was one of many ideas. So we want to start incorporating that in the camp schedule. So we'll work on that, where we're going to work that for the schedules. But we also want to bring in the camp Sundays I mentioned before that would be open to everybody. And we're going to put out dates on anybody can come to camp on those Sundays and fellowship outside at our outdoor chapel. It's just beautiful up there. Um, and have lunch together. And once again, they could go for a walk afterwards. So those are some opportunities at camp. But that is just for the summer. Then we go into the fall. I mean, I have so many ideas like music circles and community building and faith. I want to make sure that our generations are sharing their faith of what inspires them, or how they do their communication with God, and things like that. So I want to make
Wow.
sure we're hitting all the boxes there.
Now that is really nice because I think many folks would love to go into the mountains. And of course, we also have other parts of our diocese that are more desert or the rocks and all that. Each of those reflects something that nature walks, those types of things. I think that sounds wonderful to do multi-generational or even among those that are the wisdom keepers. That wow, that does sound interesting. Are you going to, do we all get camp names if we go up there?
Uh, oh gosh, that would be so confusing. I did want to mention one more thing, and I thought
Sure.
that this was something that really did inspire me with the comments we received after we did our women's retreat in
Hmm.
September. We've done 3 women's retreats now, and they've just been so fascinating. The women walk away from it always saying how special they thought it was because it was open to ages 18 and older.
Hmm.
And we had generations all the way up to, I think, our eldest one was 89 and our youngest one was 18. And it was about sharing stories of where we're at in life and our joys and our challenges. And we shared these stories, and it brought these women together in just some understanding, because the older generations was saying they didn't they had empathy for what the younger ones were saying, and then vice versa. The younger ones were like, wow, I was so blown away with what our generations of our, especially our traditionalist generations, those born in before 1946, of what they're dealing with. And it allowed our hearts to open with compassion of hearing these stories. And that's one thing that really started to inspire me, is
Hmm.
hearing their stories and wanting to hear more and support each other. And they said that they just love that about the retreat, of having these different generations sharing their stories and their hardships and their joys together. So that's another thing that really inspired me to let's include some more generations. Let's get us all together.
It seems unusual that this hasn't been done before. I mean, it's been done informally at times, but the fact
Right.
that we didn't make a ministry of it,
Mhm.
how did you come up with that idea? Was it just something one day you thought of it, or what happened?
Well, it's always been in my heart, Craig, honestly. I've
Oh,
always said I've always said that once I've been working with the youth, it's been 18 years now. I want to start working with the next generation. But now I'm seeing, well, let's bring it all together instead of youth and then our baby boomers. Let's do it all together. So it's kind of something that's always uh, been in my thought. But after the last year of seeing the changes and how important I'm finding the communications with the 2 generations, that was like, all right, let's do this. Let's propose a new idea of just being more inclusive and adding this component.
you mentioned that you've talked to some volunteers about the tea, and I know somewhat of a loaded question because I know how excited you are and when you have talked to some of these folks. Um, I haven't asked you, what feedback have you gotten from some of the youth, because you know them so well? You've watched them go from, like, that tall to that tall to that tall,
Right.
that tall. Um, what did they say when you said, first of all, I'm leaving my position as youth coordinator and moving into this new area? What was their reaction to
Mm.
what this new idea is?
Well, I didn't present it in that way. I presented that I'm just adding more inclusiveness, because I've been with these kids for so long and their families. I have known these families for 18 years now. So now I'm just introducing this idea of I'm including their parents and their grandparents now. So I'm not just working with our youth. So when I present it that way, it's a different, I'm still going to be with the youth, but also with our other generations. Um, and I'm hopeful that they'll be excited to bring somebody as well. Um, we've done some programs before, our soup serve and sings at some of the communities that we help with our older, like I would say, in lower income communities that we support. And that's been always a hit, but I want to make sure the kids are also being more inclusive and coming and bringing someone. And so that's how I think I'm going to be able to have the kids support and the youth wanting to come, is bringing a generation. So that's how I presented it. I honestly didn't ask them. I just said, this is what we're going to do.
Well, that's sort of the way you've done the ministry over
Yeah,
the
let's just do
years.
it.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think, I go back on looking at the Bible and the Gospels. I don't recall Jesus at any point saying, "What do you think, guys?"
No,
You
we're
know,
just doing
you,
it.
you just would do it. That was sort of the way that religion's been done, like that. This is what we're doing. Um, I find this fascinating. I hope that our various congregations and our friends of the diocese, this isn't just restricted for those that say, I'm a member of this church or that church, or this
Right.
could be for the community at large too. I would imagine that's your hope, that you involve a wider community of many of our friends, and you always have at camp that it's been very inclusive to those other faith traditions or no faith traditions at all. I assume you're carrying that same type of theme, aren't you?
Oh, absolutely. That's the point, is to include interfaith as well. One of our person I talked to that was excited was also excited about maybe introducing it to the program we're already involved with as the Episcopal Church, is with the Interfaith Roundtable, and
Sure.
also maybe inviting our groups from there. Everybody needs support. No one's meant to be alone. Let's support each other and let's grow together and support and share joy, love, and stories of each other. That's my goal.
Well, that's a wonderful place to leave this. And of course, you're part of the diocese, so just contact Karen Gleeson at the diocese, or call the diocese and say, who's that Karen person? Can we find out about this? Because I think it's going to be a real interesting part of our growth in our ministry. And as our bishop has directed us to become a more inclusive and to widen who we are with this wonderful message. And I thank you so much, Karen, for being part of this and your ministry. It's been a real inspiration to watch you work over these years, and I look forward to what's going to come up in the future. And so you've been listening to the Utah Epodcopalians, our unique church in this land of Utah. I'm Craig Worth of the Diocese, and our guest, Karen Gleeson, who's now multi-generational minister of getting us all together. Thanks a lot.